This is Joanne Harold with Harold Growth Consulting, and I want to say congrats to the Marketing Madmen for reaching 100 episodes. Thanks for keeping it fun and always engaging. Loved talking about how not to suck at marketing and all the fun episodes. So keep doing what you're doing. I appreciate you and congrats.
They say marketing is a madman's game. So now we turn it over to the Marketing Madmen with Nick Constantino and Trip Job.
Happy Saturday. Welcome to the Marketing Madmen. Trip Job and Nick Constantino live celebrating from the Battery.
We made quite it. How we thought we were going to celebrate it, was it? This is a different thing. I feel like it's been such a whirlwind. You and I haven't had a chance to just sit down and do one of these in a while.
Yeah, we ought to just break out in song 100 bottles of beer on the walk.
I can't count all the way down now.
Yeah.
My ADD won't get past 97. But man, it's been a heck of a run. Honestly, when I came aboard 30 or so episodes ago, it feels like it was yesterday, and I don't think I quite thought where this was going to go or what this was going to happen. And I think I've learned a lot in 100 episodes. I think we are really coming into our own, and this has become much more of a service and a necessity than I think I ever intended it to be.
Yeah, no, it's been fun, and even though I know it's been 30 official, I think you were on about 8 or 10 before that, so it's more than that. And I think I've learned to talk a little faster in the last I don't know, what is it? You've been on for about 9 months, I think,
something like that.
Yeah,
it's been a while, and I think one of the things that you're listening to either a podcast or a radio show. We have to do those together. That's challenging, right? The radio audience and what we're doing with the radio show is very different than what you're doing as a podcast. So I think that's one of the things we've been more cognizant of is separating those two out. And honestly, the reason that we haven't had a chance to do one of these is because we've had so many guests.
Yeah, and I think I'll give Nick a lot of credit for this. I mean, I think you've brought getting some themes together, and we've kind of built, at times maybe for a month theme around agencies or a month theme around B2C or sports or B2B. I mean, I think that's really hopefully given our listeners a chance to get some different perspectives over a couple episodes and then dive in. And today I think we're going to dissect a little bit about what's similar and what's different.
For sure. I think what we learned, I think the funniest thing about having, 4 or so agencies is, man, the difference in perspective from one to another. I mean, you think you'd be talking to completely different entities and completely different people. And I think that's the beauty of marketing. But I also think that's starting to come a little bit the downfall is that because it's so theory-based, it is all over the place. Like the recommendation one gives and another gives. And what I'm really coming to find is the core of this business is connection. Connection to people, and the ones that have succeeded are the ones that have built those networks for themselves and are being the ones to connect the dots, and they're the connectors. And we'll go into some details about individual people, but you just see it out there. You see the people who have thrived the longest are the ones that are great at connecting concepts, connecting people, connecting sales with marketing.
And I think I absolutely agree. And I think that's also a key part of just business and understanding that, most of us have to sell something one way or another. Marketing is there to help you sell something, but it is about connections and it's about being authentic. And I think as we get into the different agencies that we'll talk about, to your point, they're all different, but I think they're all authentic. And I think they have figured out what their brands are, who they are, and if they may approach it differently than someone else, but they're true to that. And they find the companies and individuals who need that support and can relate to how they approach it. And I think that's probably been the key.
Yeah, and again, these are simple concepts we always talk about, right? Self-awareness, understanding your customer, understanding yourself, understanding your limitations, and because of the pace of how rapid this pace is moving. I mean, I'm having people reach out that want to be on the show that are talking about, ChatGPT 4 and how they're implementing with and all this crazy stuff. And it's like, hold on a second, okay? We just came out with 3.5 and now we're on 4 and like the pace has been just sped up so much that I think that has a lot to do with it. But on that note, let's start. Let's kind of break some of these down. I like that. Let's break some of these down into segments and talk about it. So I'd like to start. Let's start with agencies because you brought it up. So we had Blue Sky. We had Conquer, we had Moto, and we had Hot House, right? So those are the 4 cores, different kinds of agencies, different kind of things. So, my big takeaway from the agencies is I was placing a lot of my anger into the wrong part of the agency. Okay, my anger is placed at media buyers. Okay, and my anger is placed at that because there is such a defined difference between being effective with your advertising and being efficient with your advertising. And by the time it gets to a media buyer, they are playing the efficiency game. Okay, and I think that when you're playing the efficiency game is when you are wasting your money now on programmatic, when they just found out that $20 billion is being thrown in the garbage. 30% of the ads never get heard by anybody. So how are you being efficient if it's 30% less effective than you were being told or telling people that it was? The strategy agencies, the people that are really integrated in a business and learning, and that is where I believe that there is more opportunity for partnership and there's more opportunity to really help these companies.
Well, and I think the 4 agencies you mentioned, obviously we had, in most cases, either the founders or the chief strategy officers, or in some cases both. And I think, yes, those are the ones that are thinking about business strategy, how do they work with their clients, and it's long-term view. And it's not, so media buying becomes transactional. And, the traditional, and this is one of, my pet peeves, is when it's all about design, that becomes honestly very transactional, short-term.
Yeah.
And I think that's where at times agencies that focus on totally just moving the media buying through, or totally on, hey, let's create a new logo, a new look, and move on, that's a point in time. I think those are the ones I've always struggled with.
Yeah, and look, at a national level, if you have really good creative, I understand why you should be efficient with your buying. Your creative speaks for itself. You have a clear brand message. This is so well thought out. You're just buying medium to get this out there. On the local level, I think that's where I have the biggest problem, right? You do not have a clear and concise strategy if you're just trying to hit everybody with a message. Because just because they're radio listeners doesn't mean they're not completely different people. And you're targeting messages, and that's where really my problem is. So it was fun to meet with people, different people, like to hear, we've dealt with Blue Sky for a long time, hearing Charlie's point of view on it, and Charlie Legg was someone who, hockey guy. I got to know him a little bit, and then all of a sudden it humanized it, and we were talking about strategies and how we can implement. And ironically, we were about to work together, and their client took too long, and another competitor swooped in and took the assets.
Yeah.
So it sucks, it happens, but you know what though? There's also something to the ability to call a bluff and actually mean it, right?
Well, and I think that's one of the things that I remember from Blue Sky, from Otomoto, and Hot House specifically. We didn't talk about it with Conquer. But I think each of them was willing to say, you know what, we may not be right for you with our clients. And whether they walked away from clients or just said early on that, again, this is the authentic part of the agency. This is how we're going to go about it. And if there are things such as maybe they want an RFP process and want to look at 4 different agencies, or they're all about a certain thing that's not the core of how they go about it, they're willing to just say, hey, we may not be right for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I have after this met with the Hot House guys again, and I met with Nick, but he was telling me a lot of stories of how Brandon approaches things, and I really like Brandon. Just that pedigree of Samsung and Louis Vuitton and all these high-end things, and I think there is a place for that on a local, regional, and a smaller level, right? There is. It's time. There's been free money flowing for so long. If ever there's a time to take a risk, it's now. It is so hard to stand out right now. You're being bombarded by messaging. It's so easy for a little rinky-dink brand to seem like the biggest brand in the world. It's time to take risks is now, and I'm excited to be a part of some of those risks because that's what I have the most fun with.
Well, and one of the things, every now and then we throw in for those of you who are out there and looking to hire an agency, one of the questions we haven't brought up, but I remember I used it a lot, was ask those prospective agencies you're talking to, give us a range of how long you've worked with your current clients, right? So Mora, for instance, with Southwire, I think it's over 15 years. It's one of their original clients. Yeah. But all of a sudden, if you'll get a pattern. If you ask for 3 or 4 and, you hear 6 months, 9 months, 3 months, and you don't hear anything that's 2 to 3 years.
Yep.
Again, if you're looking for a logo and that's it, that may be fine. Yeah. But if you want someone to take you through a business cycle and you're not hearing 2, 3, 4 years, I think you have an understanding.
And Moira had the best point. Like, she's seen regime change. So she's been the only constant. Well, 3 regime changes. Now, I'm going to counterpoint that, though. I also think you have to follow up and ask, what exactly you are doing for that company. Because there are companies that are throwing every logo on there, and what did you do? They're like, oh, well, we printed their flyer that goes to 16 people in the neighborhood, and that's that. You're an agency. Yeah. Like, let's tone it down. One of the fascinating things about Hot House, they showed me a video that they were doing. I'm not going to say the client because it's not out public yet, but massive company, and their main agency of record wasn't able to accomplish this task. So they tasked the Hot House guys with doing it. Okay. Let me just say that this is one of the most prestigious brands in the entire world, and this product launch will be the single most important product launch this company has had in probably 50 years. And the Hot House guys got creative with doing the copy of what's going to be all over airwaves all over the world. Okay? So I have two parts of this question. One, how the hell does an agency of a company of X size botch something as important to them? And two, what did those Hot House guys do to be in the place to capture that business? Because this is going to be game-changing stuff for them. So that's why I said, what is it that you are fulfilling for these clients in that agency role? I would ask that question because there, again, it is very easy, and take it from me who has spent my life pretending to be more important than I am. It is very easy to make yourself be a grand appearance.
And I'm going to take that back to one of the comments you made early on about people worrying now about ChatGPT 4, and we're still in 3.5, and a lot of people don't even understand. One, there's a difference between cycles and trends and fads. And
I agree those lines have blurred a lot more.
They've blurred a lot more, but I think where you talked about how does an agency lose or botch something so bad, historically, more often than not, I will say it's the ones who get so focused on the fads, want to be the first out there to do something, and that's where I've seen things botched.
Yeah, but at the same time, usually if you could be the first one and do it right, there's the most opportunity also. That's the risk-reward protocol of any business.
Right, and that's understanding, is there a first-mover advantage?
Yeah.
Or can you be a fast follower? And I think it just depends on what the company is, what the situation is, and how you want to go about it. But I think that's one area. So when we come back from the break, we'll dive into a few more of the categories. But we are celebrating 100 episodes of the Marketing Madmen.
Flounder, we need like a streamer sound or something to pop off on this.
So you are listening to the Marketing Madmen.
Not that sound. That was awful.
On the Extra 106.3, we'll be right back.
This is Rachel Simon from Connect the Dots Digital. I want to say congratulations to the Marketing Madmen for reaching 100 episodes. That's quite a milestone. I had a blast when I got to be on the show, and I hope next time I'm at the 680 studios, maybe one of the Braves will be there. Hopefully Spencer Strider. Anyway, great job, guys. Congratulations.
Tonight in Arkansas, there's a mother tucking in her daughter and turning off the light. A business owner is burning the midnight oil. An at-home dinner date is plating up possibility. And it's all happening under one roof. How? The power of a conversation, like the one John from Integrity Solutions had with First Horizon Bank about his vision for a sustainable mixed-use building. Now it's not just words, it's life. First Horizon Bank. Let's find a way. Go to firsthorizon.com/John. First Horizon Bank, member FDIC.
Now back to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3 FM.
Hey, this is Moira Vetter, CEO of Moto Agency and host of the new spinoff, Marketing Madhouse. According to ChatGPT, I'm supposed to say, congratulations on your 100th podcast. What an incredible milestone you've reached. Your dedication, passion, and hard work have paid off, and it is evident in the quality and success of your podcast. You've entertained and informed your listeners, creating a meaningful connection with them along the way. Here's to many more episodes filled with engaging content and continued success. Keep up the fantastic work. Man, get to the point, AI. You're killing it, guys. Congrats.
Welcome back to the Marketing Madmen. Trip Job and Nick Constantino celebrating episode 100 here at the Battery. And we were kind of going back through some of the different categories that we've done over the last 9 months since Nick's been full-time. And one of the fun ones, and I give Nick a lot of credit because it's not my space, that you've been able to bring in is the entertainment world.
Yeah.
And we've had some tremendous guests. I've learned a lot, both some of the backgrounds and how people are connected, but also, just about different thoughts about how you go about promoting, whether it's artist or whether you're tying in brands to some of these artists with the people that we've had on. And I think I think one of the first ones you brought in was Rich Dallas.
Yeah.
And that was definitely a fun episode.
One of my favorites. And I'm going to talk about Rich in 1 second. I do want to throw out, for the sake of entertainment, as podcasts are meant to be entertainment.
Yeah.
Trip, do you know how few podcasts actually make it to 100 episodes? Let's put it this way. There are 600,000 or 700,000 active podcasts at any time. Do you know what percent actually make them to 100 episodes?
I would say probably half of 1%.
It is below 1% that make it to 100 episodes. So that is an astounding feat in itself. And I think what I've come to realize is the worst thing you can do is limit yourself to what you're going to speak about.
Yeah.
But you still have to be niche, and it still has to be towards those marketing people. The good news is everybody is marketing something.
Yes.
Like I was like, let's do the sales madman. But you know what? Marketing and sales are the same freaking thing, and that is the one recurring theme that we always go back to. So now my buddy Rich. So I'm not even exactly sure how Rich and I have met, but we've talked many times. The background coming from Bad Boy Entertainment. This was the episode, if you don't remember, where we were naming our favorite rap songs, where Trip was, I think he pleaded the fifth, which I think is a good reference. But Rich, coming from the hip hop background, what he said about Biggie and Craig Mack and the Big Mac with McDonald's, I mean, that was probably my favorite nugget of all of this. If you think about in 1994, Big Mac and McDonald's getting involved in that urban hip hop scene, that did not happen. Our memory is so short term. Yeah. That was such a risk, even though ironically, McDonald's were all in those neighborhoods. It is so. That was, and then
it was not Ray Kroc's McDonald's.
It was not, and honestly, like it was such a big thing, and it was so impactful for me because I grew up listening to that, but then even talking about reality TV with him and just getting the insights of how the shows are filmed and what they go after, and it was really cool. And I think Rich hit me up after, and he goes, dude, I haven't had a conversation like that in so long. They're so infatuated with his persona on reality TV, which is this womanizing, bad guy that he felt like he fell into that, and he loved talking about hip hop. So
I had a great respect for his knowledge and the way he thought through things. And
very
sometimes
smart guy.
I think that's one of the challenges sometimes with those in the entertainment world. They have a persona, that becomes their persona that sells them, but it may not really be who they are.
Yeah, I think he caught himself getting lost in the character, and I think the reason that we've become friends is because I don't watch Love and Hip Hop. I couldn't care less about the person. Now, ironically, I did look back at an episode, and me and my wife had a couple of drinks and started laughing at just who he is on TV because I never knew. Yeah. But he was a great one. And then let's talk about it sounds crazy, but let's talk about Janelle because we talk about entertainment and Fox News and say what you will. It is not news. It is political commentary. Let's just call it what it is. And I think
it's reality TV in a
reality
way.
Radio, reality TV. But I think the conversation with her, and again, it was such a different group of people that had this really, and that was another one of my absolute favorite conversations. But we weren't talking about so much politicians as how they're reaching the wrong people and how this pop culture all blends into each other. So I love that.
We were talking about, we weren't 3 generations. We were probably 2 generations, but we're split in different backgrounds. And yet we were, to the comment about Rich, we were having very open, respectful conversations from different points of view, which we all 3 of us come from.
Which is an amazing thing. And I cannot state this enough. That is the conversations most people are having. We are taking the horrible ones and the split ones and amplifying them, but most people have enough in common that they can talk through it, or they're civil and cordial enough that they can look past each other's differences.
Well, and even I'll relate some of the things now back in the more corporate side of things, and we're a smaller company, but we're very open. But you have to be able to provide feedback. You have to have honest dialogue, and you have to respect that you're going to get differences of opinions and good ideas. From someone who might be with you 6 months versus someone who's been there for years and years. And there's still a lot of companies out there that don't respect that diversity, and everything's more top-down driven, and people aren't, A, they're not willing to speak up, and B, there's others, and I will say I've seen it a lot more, that aren't able to take feedback.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's part of our parenting society over the last 10 to 15 years, but for various reasons.
Well, look, one of the things that I find very funny is, and I think most people that's listened to this show now can see why people would think that I'm a little bit of a know-it-all, okay? I have people that work from all these people like, oh, it's just a know. do you know how many questions I ask people every day? Do you know that we build a digital department by me asking a million questions? I knew I didn't know it. I asked questions, respectful questions from people that I grew to have a relationship that wanted to help me. So it's not know-it-all. I'm not coming up with this. You have to ask questions, and part of receiving feedback is being able to ask questions. If you're not used to asking questions, then how are you going to take feedback? Because you don't want that. You're just blowing it off. So part of life is the more you are willing to ask and improve on yourself, the easier it is for you to take feedback, because all asking a question is asking for feedback and asking for a response. So I think, I don't know if it's a generational thing. I don't know if it's everyone's got too high and they deserve an opinion, or the feelings are going to be hurt. But I agree with you, man. It is bad.
Or they think that they can Google the answer. So literally this week we
would chat GPT the answer now.
Now it's true. So we had a client, and this is obviously we're doing more and more in the biofuels and bioenergy space, and they told us, we asked them questions, and in a couple cases we said, look, we're not sure of the answer, but our sister division that's really focused on that, we can get back to you. They actually were moving forward with them because they were so disappointed. These guys know the market. They said our competitor tried to tell them the answers on everything, and they knew they were bluffing.
Yeah,
so sometimes it's like, if you don't know.
Those people are the same too. The people that won't take feedback are the ones that pretend to know answers. Let me tell you what I've learned. The easiest response to that is, I don't know, I'll get back to you.
Exactly.
I don't know, I'll get back to you. Now, I am completely fine with, in the moment, venturing a guess and saying, hey, don't quote me this, but here's my 2 cents. Because you also got to be able to improvise and think on your feet. But at the same time, if you're talking concrete goods and percentages and numbers, I don't know, I will get back to you. It gives you time to formulate an opinion, strategize, get back to it. So yeah, look, I don't know how we got from entertainment to here, but let's throw this whole conversation off, because one of my favorite ones, actually, Trip, you weren't here for this, was Mr. Cesar Millan. When we talked about the microdosing of hallucinogens. I didn't know if this one. I don't know where this one was going to go.
I wasn't here.
I didn't know where this one was going to go, but Cesar. He worked for CNN for 25 years. He was a writer for CNN. Another thing that I've learned through this, old school journalists are some of the most successful people because they are the best at putting out a clear, concise brand message. Cesar was the most polished. He believed in what he said. He had a whole bunch of evidence to back up what he said. And ultimately, you know what he said when he started with? Look, this might not be for everybody. If it's not for you, stop listening now. The first thing he said, and I was so respectful of it, because we are so hell-bent on, you know what? If you don't like what's here, shut it off.
How many different options do you have? Right?
We're not going to make everyone happy. So
and Don Dixon was another one. Talk about old school and having been there and knowing when to turn it off and when to walk away. And
I've ran into Don like 4 times since we met. 4 times since we've met. I caught him on the phone. It was funny. He was coming back from Portland, and he's like, "What's up?" I go, "What the hell are you doing?" He's like, going about $1.05, coming back from Portland. Don's 72 years old. He's driving 100 miles an hour back from Portland because he was so bored with driving. And I was like, there he is. So many good ones. And as we look through this, entertainment-wise, I think Prize Picks was a really good one. It was a little pins and needly what we could and we couldn't say. Right. It's an interesting space. But once the lawyers looked over, like, this is completely fine. You can't take these things too seriously, right? Like, you are in a competitive space with an industry that overlaps with what betting is like. You're not drawing correlation. You're just saying, like, this is how I think of these things as bets, not as placements. So that was a really good one. And I love the local company there. And then I think realistically, when you go through the rest of these, we had a lot of sports coming up. And then we had a lot of, I think let's do sports, and then let's go into like industry stuff, like the radio one and the billboard one. So what about sports, Trip? What did you learn about sports? What were some big ones in sports that you picked up?
I think, one of the recents, and it started out as a little more on the B2B side with TK Elevator and Gerson. But, just the part about the refs, right? And the ref community, and the fact that, he's kind of gone viral, and there's so many people now who recognize him. But, he's taken a message and a passion, and that was, that's the side hustle. Yeah. And so I think, many of us out there, and I would say to those in marketing is, look, if there is a side hustle, something you're passionate about, I think the Gerson episode was a great one to listen to.
And a great example of not always agreeing on everything. I do not agree with him. If you are a professional ref and you make a bad call, you deserve to be heckled. I don't care what anyone says. I have been to too many games. NBA is the one that always stands out the most, but NFL seasons have been destroyed by bad calls by refs. Those people are professional.
But they're full-time paid.
I know, but I'm just saying in that he was very clear that no one should be heckled. It's like no. Yeah. You're paid enough money that you should be heckled. Like that's it. When you if you're an NBA player and you miss 2 free throws, do you deserve to get booed? Of course you do. Your only job is to shoot free throws.
Yeah, exactly. Well, a heckled's one thing. When we've seen them start throwing. I mean, that's obviously
and
over
of course,
the line,
but that line should have been delineated. Yeah. I think Jason Wells was another good one that blurred that lines. NBA guy, good pedigree, what he's training, the mentality stuff he's going after. I was worried that one was going to get a little bit preachy and a little bit, but he did a really good job of grounding everything back to look. This mindset is something that can be switched, but just like everything else, you have to practice. You have to train. You have to commit yourself. And that's another constant theme that keeps coming up that I don't think is talked about enough. We do this show. I started doing this show with an intention of getting better at doing shows like this. I didn't even know what it was going to look like, but it's reps. Right? Now we've done so many. So I've slowed my cadence down a little bit, believe it or not. I've tried to speak slower. Trip and I are not jumping over each other's throats, talking over each other as much. You learn and you get better. And it becomes, my favorite thing he said was, you do it enough, it becomes instinct, and then it becomes habit, and then it becomes instinct. And when you can have things be instinctual, your chance for success is just exponentially goes up.
Well, and if you prep in advance, then you can make it as a real conversation. And hopefully the listeners hear that from us. You know, it's not a scripted. This is not meant to be, a TV show.
I think they know it's not scripted.
but I think we became better as
if it was
becomes
scripted,
conversation.
It would be the best script ever written because it's so bad. It's so not a script. All right, so I'm going back. We're forgetting some of these. What about? We had back-to-back Georgia ones.
Yes.
What about Hudson talking about Mark Richt? And what about then we had Joe Stanton.
Joe Ham,
and then we had Joe Ham. We had Joe from and John Stanton that came over from the NIL space, who also played for Georgia, talking about Kirby. I think we got more information on Kirby and Mark Richt than anybody's ever gotten.
I think the relationships with their players was what I took away from
it was
both of
unbelievable.
that.
And then about a month after that, we actually did an event with Mark Richt, and Mark Richt is getting towards the end. He can't drive anymore. Yeah. We had to go pick him up, but Hudson went to his house, picked him up, drove him down, and we did the lunch with the Legend event. And you could just see how the demeanor of a head football coach, and he's struggling with Parkinson's, and he just the ability to go and meet with people is not as much. So you saw a completely different human being, and it was so amazing to see that coach and what he has to be on the field to all of a sudden now in front of people at that stage of his career and life and what he is. It really was unbelievable to see.
Well, I think you see the respect from Hudson and others who want to do that. And I always remember the image. I see it from time to time because I'm a incredible John Wooden fan. I've read so many books about John Wooden, but I think most people probably have seen the picture of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar literally helping Wooden out to the center of the court.
Yep.
And that was, he said he's the most impactful person in his life.
Yep, and I think when you look at it, and Hudson's a great one because Hudson didn't play in the NFL, didn't have this long career. It was the college was it. I mean, that was the pinnacle, and he knows it. So that relationship is just that important. Yeah, but Joe Ham, what about Joe Ham with the Super Bowl ring and hearing about? We got the week of the Super Bowl to hear from somebody who played in the Super Bowl, and I'm not saying there aren't a million people that play in the Super Bowl, but pretty damn cool for him to bring his ring here and talk about the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
One of the advantages of working also at a sports station, as I guess, is having some of that access
and the dedication. I mean, I think that was and the other thing we took from Joe was, look, there's going to be times in your career where, you want to be the person, but you're not. How do you go about it? And that's what you heard from Joe. Yep. And, we were talking a little bit during the break. And one of the things I've taken away from a lot of these people is, if you want to grow in your career, it's that willingness to do a lot of different things. And I think Joe expressed that, right? And sometimes we can't all be the guy. Right, so how do you do other things to help your team, help your business?
And that was Jason Wells also a lot. Was what happens when you're not the superstar anymore? Yeah. Right, what happens? Those 8 girlfriends you had all of a sudden aren't so interested. What are the friends? Who is interested? Is that diversity? If you're not preparing yourself for life after sport, life after business, how many retired people that lose their minds?
Yeah,
they lose their minds.
Well, right now everyone's talking about with the NBA being over and do super teams work or not. Right? And so that whole idea of are you better off not having super teams, or you better off having
it's going to ebb and
teams
flow.
like
They're saying that because the CBA's up and no one can afford paying these guys $60 million. Ironically, this morning, so Chris Paul had just gotten traded, and he was on Harvard Business Review doing a podcast this morning. The timing, they definitely pre-recorded and didn't exactly align. But when you hear from Chris Paul, you almost are like, what? So, they're like, he's being paid too much, blah, 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 blah. Dude, he's 38 years old. He's been the head of the players union forever, has all these jobs he's doing after. He wants to take care of all this stuff, answered calls, got us through COVID. Like, who cares?
He's a mentor. I mean, he's a coach in the locker room, right?
Come on. And
what's your role? And I think that's the key. And what we heard from a lot of different people is sometimes, figure out what your role is. And there's not always the alpha. Right.
He was not Allen Iverson. Let's just call it what it is. And I'm saying as a scorer, as a personality, but he's going to be remembered a lot longer than Allen Iverson is because of the impact that he had on basketball. So seeing that diversity, I think that was another, you're right, is a big theme. Goes to sports, goes to business, goes across the board to everything. So I enjoyed the sports conversation a lot.
Yeah, and I think, I'll use this as a segue into maybe back to maybe B2B or B2C with some of our guests, but I'm a big believer in marketing having that generalist. There are a lot of people who just want a career, all right? They want to be the 45th guy on the 45-man team or whatever, and they're going to be a functional specialist. They're the kicker, or they're the holder, or whatever.
And there's value in those people. There's
absolutely
an exorbitant amount of value in those people, because you'd rather that person be a specialist when you need them than be a rookie when you need them.
But you want to be a coach after you're done. Chris Paul, for example, the person who can move over every couple of years and take different roles.
Yep.
All right, become the generalist. Whether it was Maura, whether it was Joanne, Gerson. We can go on and on.
Yep.
The people that moved in different areas and learned different parts of the business. And I think that just prepares you longer term for even greater success.
I agree, and I think a great example of that is the lines of B2B and B2C have blurred so much. If you had asked me 5 years ago, and look, I wasn't thinking about these kind of things 5 years ago, let's be honest, but the lines of what B2B companies are doing to market is so going near what B2C companies do. Like even they're talking about having a TikTok page for an elevator company. Yeah. They don't yet, but it's in the cards? Yes, that is not a B2B strategy. It was not build a TikTok page with video. Yeah. So you see those lines blurring, but without that B2C background, how are you going to apply those principles to B2B? So I think you see those lines blurring a little bit, and that's why that diversity, you should not go into something with a specialist mentality knowing you're going to only do that thing, because in my experience, you make yourself completely disposable, and mostly because things change so quickly. Yep. Whims, management teams, executives, boards, they're changing at a faster pace than I've ever seen. I mean, if you look back in the day, you had 20, 30-year-old chairmen that were around. That does not happen anymore. Other than Jamie Dimon and a couple of these guys, it just doesn't happen anymore. It doesn't happen anymore. I think. What about some of the other B2B things we picked up? I loved Moira's general mentality of again, like, this has to be the long play. You have to have a long-term vision with the ability to pivot and be dynamic if you need to, but it kept coming back to fundamentals. And I think we can be as flashy as we want, but I think this show has kept coming back to fundamentals, and I was always a little worried that we were going to go down a path and just get away.
No, but I think it's
fundamentals don't change.
Strategy is there. Technology is an add-on, right? Technology can be used to help you be more effective and efficient, and I think we've talked a little bit about that with different people. But if you don't understand your customers, you're not going out and observing what's going on and developing that strategy. That's when you run the risk of going down a failed path of tactics and execution being a big fail. And we talked a lot about that, back with Hot House, I know, and I think with Conqueror, we talked about some of the biggest fails and why did they happen. That they had seen.
And it seems to be recurring themes of why they happen, which is usually the case. I think it comes back to a conversation we had about AI also.
Yep.
Your outputs are only as good as the inputs. You cannot make smart, educated decisions and guesses without having good data, without having good inputs. All of the outputs are worthless without, and it takes years to accumulate the data required, because you have to have for margin of error, sample size, fluctuations. Man, COVID, how bad did COVID? If you started getting data in COVID, you might as well rip it up and throw it in the garbage, because that data is worthless. 2020 and 2023, could you imagine more different times? It's insane.
Well, and I want to bring on one of my favorite guests, because I've known her for a while. And granted, we talked a little more about reviews and customer experience, but Dr. Sandy Japp at Emory. And you talk about research and getting the data.
And you know what? you bring up a good point, Drip. She had fun.
Yeah.
One of the recurring themes, I swear to God, I would have never thought. But, because of the way I think the show is structured and because of kind of your and I shtick, I think it makes it a little bit more fun for people. And I don't think it's what they're expecting. I think they all walk out of here like, no one's ever like, oh my God, don't air that. They always walk out like, hey, can you send me? I want to help you share it, which is a testament, I think, to what we have built. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but you get worried, man.
Our listeners are growing, so that's a good thing
head
too,
of
right?
Emery's marketing department with this schmuck here. I mean, are you kidding me? But we agreed, and we had a lot of things in common and agree on, and she challenged us, and we had some fun with it. So I think, but go on about Sandy, because you're right.
No, she's fantastic, and obviously, a key about research, and things take a while. And I think that's one of the challenges. And, when we get into B2C, maybe we'll, after the break, we'll dive in a little more to B2C. But you have to keep at it. You can't just jump in and jump out. And I think that's one of the things that, she preached, the long haul and always being there with your customers. And, in her focus, it was all about, what are different ways, or reviews or other means of online credibility. And we learned a few things there.
Yep. And we got to remember, she's doing a research paper. So most people, if Yelp is doing, they're going to do a self-serving study for themselves. They're not going out and doing real research with peer review. So it is always good to see those peer review papers. And it is, you got to, it's long, you got to dissect it, but it is very important to have those tools when you can use them, for sure.
Yeah. So, with that, I think one of the other B2C, real quick, we got about a minute, I think, was Tito's.
Yeah, I had some fun with Tito's. The story, again, it's one of those, man, did they catch at the right time? They built a brand. Like, when I say a brand, Texas Vodka, not just Tito's. I'm saying Texas Vodka exists because of
clearly
them.
Defined, authentic brand. And they did hit timing perfect.
And they didn't pivot from what they were. And again, we didn't have an American vodka. It's crazy to think about it, but we did not have an American vodka. So whether they saw the opportunity or but it's also something you'll never be able to duplicate that again. People have tried; they will try. You might get you might get another, but you're not going to make a vodka with that kind of clout that came that quickly. It will never happen again, which makes it that much cooler to talk to them about it.
Yeah, and they were unwavering in there. This is where we're going to be, and this is where we're not going to be. And I think that was a great lesson. And with Theo, and actually I had someone the other day who knows Theo well and said, "God, I had to listen to that episode."
There
so it was also pretty.
They're coming
fun.
out of the woodwork, man.
They're coming out of the woodwork. And we had private bars and things like that as well on one of the hip hop shows, but. We are the Marketing Madmen. We are celebrating our 100th episode. So you're listening to Nick and Trip, and we will be right back on Extra 106.3.
This is Joe Artemi with Moe's Southwest Grill. Congrats to Nick and Trip on 100 episodes of the Marketing Madmen. I am honored to be somewhere on the ranking of the top 100 guests you've had on the show so far. Just don't tell me where. Here's to many more episodes, fellas.
This morning in the Atlanta airport, no one's missing a meal on Mac Wilburn's watch. With 11 restaurants to serve passengers, he's got dining for every destination. And it all started when Mac talked with First Horizon Bank about opening a franchise in the airport. Now it's open for business and cleared for takeoff. First Horizon Bank. Let's find a way. Go to firsthorizon.com/Mac. First Horizon Bank, member FDIC.
Now back to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3 FM.
Welcome back to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3. We are celebrating our 100th episode. And again, if you're tuning in just to start, very few people make it this far. Yeah. So I'm honored to have started this with Trip. I'm proud to have made where we have. But most importantly, thank you to everyone who's listened, everyone who's participated. We get more requests of people that want to be on the show. And, it's hard to vet out who is someone who just sends it to a million companies and who listens. But the tide is turning, and I feel people that are engaging more and following us on social media and being more part of it. The goal is not to be a podcast or a radio show. Yeah. The goal is to be a solution for people who want to have these conversations. They are not being had, Trip. They are not happening. Right. They're happening on a national level, maybe on a micro level, but the regional, with a city as big as Atlanta, I'm shocked that there is not more of these conversations happening.
Well, and we have to thank both David Dickey and Colin Wheat for their support. And then also the original partner, my former business partner, Darren Rand.
For sure.
And there's no question we talked about sometimes being unabashedly yourself and authentic.
For sure.
That is Darren. And we had a lot of fun with Darren for about the first 60 episodes. And he's doing well with Rand Inc. And thrilled that, Nick, you've been able to join us. And I think we've just taken it, like we said, onward and upward and now into our next 100.
Yeah. So now let's talk about some things I've learned about podcasting, because this is let's switch over to the actually how we can help people. Okay. So when we started doing this, I reached out to a lot of people. Grant Cardone was the big one that I spoke to. Very big real estate guy, very big public figure. And I was connected with him. And he goes, okay, so rule number 1, do not do anything until you get to 100 episodes. And I said, Grant, why? And he goes, there's 2 things. 1, what if you suck at it? 2, you won't be good till you get to 100 episodes. And 3, what if someone likes your first 5 and they can only hear 6, 7, and 8? Right now, we have a back catalog of 100. So if you like one, you might go listen to 100 of them, which means you're spreading the influence so much faster. And my goodness, when we started promoting around this episode, I mean, we are upwards of 20,000 podcasts per week right now, downloads per week we're getting. So the radio show is doing well. We've had really good ratings for Nielsen. I think having a local station helps that. But when you're doing podcasting, your content, your SEO, your chaptering, do not take that stuff for granted. You could have the best show in the world. If you are not playing the games in which Google, Apple, Spotify do to index and share your podcast, you are doing yourself a disservice. It is like everything else in the world. You could have the best product. It needs a plan.
And, well, that's the key part. Need a plan. And I've written a lot, whether it's on LinkedIn or different publications out there around content strategy and calendars. And the biggest fail I see is someone who wants to start something and they have an idea for the first one, maybe the second one, and they don't take any time to write anything out. I say to everyone, I said, you really need to get 6 episodes or whatever it is fleshed out. I call them skeletons. All right. Beyond that, you need to have another 5 to 6 ideas.
Yep.
And those are headlines.
Yep.
Nothing more.
Yep.
But if you don't, whether it's a newsletter, podcast, blog, whatever it is, if you don't do that work up front, and Nick does a lot of that work now, and that's why we did some of these themes, guess what? You're going to get 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, and life, business, whatever is going to come up, and you're not going to be ready. You're going to push 1 week off, or you're going to go do one, and you're going to be bad because you don't have any prep. And it just, that's the failure I see more often than not.
And you have to have a core, right? Like I did a couple of Marketing Madmen minutes. Time didn't allow me to keep doing them, but the core is there. We promote on LinkedIn. We have social media that goes out. We do a podcast the week before, the radio show the week before we promote. We launch a podcast. The word I would like to tell everyone is cadence. It sounds so crazy. It's not a word you hear often in anything, but you have to have a cadence with your product releases, with your schedule, with the way you speak. How you speak on a show and your cadence is so important, because honestly, that tone and that it's how you're gonna make shows easier. You know how hard it is to spit out a minute and just end on a minute? You need practice. You remember
during COVID, I started out Tuesdays and Thursdays with Trip, the video on LinkedIn.
And you got cadence.
I got cadence, and then
almost flowed into each other.
After about 50 to 60, I went to 1 day a week. And to your point, I think I got up to about 110. And then at that point, we started doing this, and there were so many other things going on.
Would you agree that cadence? Because if you come out and start screaming one day, and then you're like this one day, and then it's not going to blend. It's not going to make any sense. So, and look, let's go into some mediums now, because I think we've learned a lot. We've spoken with a lot of people. So digital. So right now, digital is still in the Wild West. It's crazy out there. I haven't had people tell me consistent stories. I mean, Google Analytics 4 is screwing everybody up. I have a client who was kicked off Google. He still doesn't understand why. He can't get someone to answer. That $13,000 I just won't take of his money. So he started doing radio again, and guess what? Yeah. Up 25% in the month, where he stopped doing pay-per-click and kept doing radio. Yeah. Because he'd been doing it forever. He was already established there. He already had his SEO maximized. But the digital world, it is crazy.
Programmatic. We've had a few rants on that.
Programmatic right now, and guys, we fill 100 million programmatic impressions every month. We have a huge programmatic, but I'm telling you right now, there is no way to know if people are actually hearing your message or not. It is impossible. It is such a micro level. There's one impression here, one impression here. Radio is freaking governed by the FCC. I have to have notarized affidavits when we have to keep logs. We can get rated and lose our license by not keeping logs of every advertiser we had on. Isn't it crazy to think about? But they're trusting an industry which is completely made up. I don't know if I went on my Lumascape RAM here. Have you ever seen the Lumascape? It is 600 people that are taking your money before a digital impression even happens.
Yeah.
That's crazy. It doesn't make any sense. Why do you need 600 people? You are serving an audience with a message. Why do we make it so complicated?
Yeah, and then there's social. And I wasn't on, but obviously I'm a huge proponent of LinkedIn. But you had Rachel on. So I know it was a great episode.
Rachel was really good, and I think Rachel is providing a service that more people need. And it really, that was another theme, right? Branding yourself. Yeah. We forget about it. We get lost in it. That was Jason Wells too. Let's stop talking about your business. What are you doing to make yourself better and marketing yourself? And it's another thing that is just lost. And I bet you we're going to do a lot more of those.
Yeah, and I think, I mentioned earlier before with side hustles, you can also brand yourself that's both good for your business and good for your side hustle, right? As long as you're authentic and true.
We talked about it with Gerson.
Yeah.
A side hustle almost always is good for your work life also, because the amount of things you learn from the side hustle should be able to be applied to your professional life also, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. What do we got? We got anything else? What do you got in closing, bud?
Well, let's see here. Let's do a couple of fun tidbits we learned. So I see Joanne Harold here. We learned that she used to help out as a Hamburglar, and in her early days at McDonald's. And then I remember we set up a bar somewhere with Tito's.
Oh yeah. Oh, that was at Big Boy's house. That was a great one.
Yeah.
That was a great one. And I think one of my favorite ones was actually our segment with Charlie, where we did the your 30 seconds about media, and we ran around and had him give like his impression of each media, and we did like a quiz show.
Yep.
We're gonna have to bring some of those back. That was fun. I enjoyed the stories with Brandon and Nick. Hearing about when the horror stories with MTV, and then when he was with Samsung. And the guy had the Japanese flag on, which was perceived by the Koreans as like a war signal, and he had to save it. I very much enjoyed those.
How can we forget Don Dixon and his mom was a stripper?
We started the episode that way. I mean, ironically, some of the most fun I have is the titles of these things, because you got to be fun, you got to be brief, but like. Sometimes you got to start at the beginning. That's what I call that one. Yeah. And the beginning was my mom was a stripper, and what else you say? You start there. I think if you ever had to have a hook, my mom was a stripper was a pretty good way to reel them in, right?
Yeah. So it was great. Well, hey, it's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed the last 9 months working with Nick, and we've got some great things already lined up for. The next few weeks, and I think plans throughout the year is going to continue on. So
and please write to us. Let us know what you want to hear about. Join. We get a lot of requests, but I can't reiterate this enough. We're going to probably say yes. And then if you're bad, we're probably not going to air it. Yeah. But we're going to say yes. Let's have some fun and let's do it.
Yeah, let's. It's been a blast. Keep listening. Keep giving us ideas, and definitely if you want to be on the show, we will try to get you scheduled in. So you've been listening to the 100th episode of the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3. We'll be back next week.
This is Janelle King, and I just want to say congrats to the Marketing Madmen on reaching 100 episodes. Thank you so much for having me on the show and being able to share with the world how marketing plays a role in politics. Keep doing what you're doing. Looking forward to many, many more.
This morning in North Carolina, wheels are spinning. Determination is winning. A passion is now a thriving business, and it shows no signs of slowing down. How? The power of a conversation, like the one Clint Spiegel had with First Horizon Bank about starting a bike wheel manufacturing facility in Asheville. Now it's not just talk, it's rubber meets road. First Horizon Bank. Let's find a way. Go to firsthorizon.com/Clint. First Horizon Bank, member FDIC.